Get to Sal Capaccio here. Football Friday on WGR is brought to you by Salino Law. Car crash, call Salino. Call the 8s, and by Crosby's Pizza and Subs. Crosby's hometown fuel, game day ready since 1922.
You know, we're in full game preview mode when Sal's tweeting out the referees, and I'm like going back through those games to figure out if I'm mad at any calls Brad Allen made in the 3 straight wild card games, Sal.
He reffed for the Bills wild card game when they won the division in 2020, but had to play the wild card against in COVID here against the Colts. Mm-hmm. Then the following year, he reffed the wild card game against the Patriots in the perfect game. And then the following year, he reffed the wild card game when the Dolphins came with Skylar Thompson. 3 straight Bills wild card games he reffed, actually 20, 21, and 22.
All right, it's bad news for the Jags. Are they getting out there that the Bills are 3-0 in games that he's reffed in the wild card round?
Is that going on Liam Cohen's bulletin board?
Yeah, I guess so. Going to overcome the refs.
It could very well be. He's actually his crew is not known to call a lot of penalties, so a little bit lighter on that side of things. I guess they don't call as many holding penalties, something like that. I think it's what it is. And the Bills, with everything that Mike Vrabel said about holding and whatever, you know what I mean. But I think that's kind of the rub on his crew. But it is a mixed crew because it's the playoffs, so I don't know how much you can gain from it. You know what I mean? He has not reffed a game for the Bills this year, but he actually just did a Jags game 2 weeks ago against the Colts.
Have a stat for you here, Sal. Before we get into this game, Doug Clausen, CBS Sports, put this one on. I like this. Why does this Super Bowl race feel so wide open? Like, we all kind of acknowledge, like, yeah, it's different than years past. And this is one way to say it. Doug Clausen writing this a minute ago. This is the first time in playoff history the starting quarterbacks on the top 2 seeds on each side enter with 0 career playoff wins. Bo Nix, Drake May, Sam Darnold, and Caleb Williams. The top 4 seeds, 0 career playoff wins for the quarterbacks. That is like the backdrop to why everyone talks about this playoff field the way that they do. And that makes sense to me. Like, all right, first time ever it's kind of looked like this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a smaller picture, like kind of a micro and a macro here when you talk about that, Jeremy. For me, the micro is, every time we've gone into the playoffs over the last several years, it's more felt like, okay, like who's going to knock off Kansas City, right? Mm-hmm. Who's going to knock off Philadelphia? Who's going to knock off Baltimore? Whichever team you choose, there's always been some teams right there where you're like, okay, who's going to do that? Who's going to be the team to knock off those teams? They are clearly the best teams in the field. Even who's going to knock off Buffalo? But hey, Buffalo's got to get over Kansas City. No doubt there's been a hierarchy. I think the macro is really interesting to me from a football perspective, which is this a one-off or are we seeing a change? You know what I mean? Like, is this something that are we looking at next year? Okay, we're going to see these same people in it. Is it going to be Trevor Lawrence again and Bo Nix again? And is it Drake May again? Or is this, okay, this happened this year, but really this is just kind of what happened this year, and next year we're going back to, you're going to see Mahomes back again, and you're going to see Burrow, and you're going to see Lamar. I just find it really interesting, like if we're seeing an actual change or if this is just kind of a one-off a little bit.
Right. Are the Jags one of these teams that you think has staying power past this year?
Depends how good the coach is, right?
I do, yeah, Joe, but I wonder, like, I think sometimes you get sometimes you can get a hot coach that comes in and it's a bit of a lightning in a bottle situation where then all of a sudden teams catch up a little bit, right? You get a little more film on what the coach is doing. You get a little more film on what the player is doing. I think of C.J. Stroud for this from a couple of years ago with Houston, right, and how good they were. And he comes in and takes a step back. But that's happened a few times, and now he's playing better, right? But, I mean, I do think that happens.
To the coach point, like, is Liam Cohen the next Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, or the next Bobby Slowick? Like, Bobby Slowick was the name. Yeah. And Ben Johnson's a good one for this, too. Like, if Ben Johnson is legit, like, you get a great coach, and there's 2 ways to do it. In fact, Sal, here's a fun little conversation we'll save for the future. I was talking with Carl Jones locally. You know Carl. And he asked me a question. He said, if you were to have a super draft and you included quarterbacks and play callers, how many quarterbacks go before the first play caller goes? And
interesting.
Who's the first like, does McVay go before Dak Prescott, right? You'd go Josh Allen, Drake May, pick your 7 or 8 quarterbacks, and then you'd get to McVay, Shanahan, Ben Johnson, then a quarterback, then a play caller. Like, there are 2 ways to get there, and we don't often see the great play caller and the great quarterback other than, like, McVay and Stafford. I guess that's the closest we could do.
Reed and Mahomes.
Reed and Mahomes, sure. Yeah. But, like, to me, that's a lot of this, too. If you look at the NFC, I've got offensive-minded head coaches that are these young guys. Ben Johnson's just the latest one. Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Clint Kubiak now with Seattle. Like, you get young, bright play callers that are doing it with quarterbacks that aren't thought of on the level as like a Josh Allen. It's whatever. It's all very interesting. It's all part of the, I guess, the tapestry of this playoff.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Carl, I actually did some TV with Carl last night. Going to do TV again with him tonight, and very, very smart question and way to present it. And I would say too, it's interesting bringing it back to Bills-Jags. You brought up McVay and Stafford. And remember, McVay had Goff, and what did he do? He would talk to him in his helmet until there was 15 seconds left. Remember how they took the league by storm like that, right?
Yep.
Guys, Liam Cohen does the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen talks to Trevor Lawrence at the line of scrimmage and kind of gives him the answers to the test while he's up at the line of scrimmage. And one of the things I think to watch out for Sunday, I think Bills fans should kind of key in on this a little bit and see, do the Bills start changing things after that happens, after the 15 seconds runs down the play clock? Because other teams have done that to try to slow down Jacksonville. And obviously it hasn't worked a ton over the last, 8 weeks, but I do think that you have to have a certain type of defense. You have a certain type of defensive coordinator and play caller to be able to do that. And the Bills do, because we all know the Bills love to spin things after snap, post snap. They like to show you a look. Then they change it up a little bit. They like to move their safeties around. I think that's a key in this game where Trevor Lawrence is going to be at the line of scrimmage. He's going to hear from Liam Cohen. Okay, this is what they're doing. Stay in this play. We got base over here. Here's where the linebacker's coming from. He sets a protection. You get to 14, 13 on the play clock. Suddenly the Bills know he can't be talked to anymore. They start moving things around and force Trevor to have to go to something different or maybe not even recognize it.
And Sal, like this Bills defense over the years, it has earned a reputation of what they're going to give you. Sure, they disguise some stuff, but they kind of line up and just play. And this year's Bills defense, it feels like that is less the case than any other year before.
Because they've had to figure out how to mitigate some of their losses, right?
Yeah,
their injuries. This Bills team has had to overcome a lot of the losses and personnel they did not expect to not have. And I think because of that, they've had to find new ways. And that's why you see them completely be a different team a lot in the second half on defense. I think what's happened here for the Bills this year, and people will say, okay, well, that's just they have a bad defensive game plan. And you could look at it that way. It's fine. The way I look at it is they go into a game on defense and say, okay, we know who we are. Let's see what they're going to do to us, because we have to figure out with our personnel, which is kind of limited, how we need to employ them. So we got to give ourselves a few series here to figure that out. And then once we see what they're doing to our personnel, then we can do it. I think that's why you see the better stats in the second half.
The Barnes Firm Injury Report, Sal, let's do that. It's brought to you by the Barnes Firm. Injured, for help, call 1-800-8-million. Only 2 players had their distinction or their designation move. Matt Milano went from did not practice to full practice. He had an illness. And Matt Prater was a full participant. Also, TJ Sanders shows up on the report, shoulder but full participant. Any other takeaways from the injury report or any on those 2 guys themselves?
I think the Prater news is really encouraging and good, obviously. But you guys were talking about the kicker situation and, why not just dress Matthew Wright? I don't know. It's a great question. I think that there's a lot to be said for the operation and the trust between the snapper, the holder, the kicker, and everything that goes on with all of that. There's a lot of things that go into the kickoffs and those, certain plays. I think the Bills would feel really comfortable and confident in Matt Prater as long as he's healthy. But I guess you still have to wait on that. I think yesterday having a full practice is a really good sign. But guys, by tomorrow at 4 p.m., we'll know, right? I mean, if the Bills feel that there's any risk at all with Matt Prater, they will elevate Matthew Wright. Or they could sign him to the 53, I guess, but they would put him on the roster in some capacity. And then the next benchmark after that would be 11:30 Sunday morning when the active/inactive list comes out. As far as Milano is concerned, good news on him. Obviously sick, there's an illness run. Jags have a guy that's sick as well, Jerry Jones. He was missed a day. He was limited yesterday. So, you hope you get through that, and that seems like that's happening. The other ones I'll tell you, not trending well for Terrell Bernard. The fact that Shaq Thompson's been limited 2 days in a row isn't great, but he's been limited. He's been dealing with the neck injury since Cleveland. He's played. Don't think there's anything to be too concerned about there. And then obviously we know that the team's probably not going to have Maxwell Hairston. The one I'm really keeping an eye on, Ty Johnson.
Yeah, Ty Johnson, a second straight missed practice.
And 2 days in a row, the ankle injury. Remember, he went back in the game. He scored a touchdown after the ankle injury. He's missed 2 days of practice here. Sean McDermott will join me on the Extra Point Show later today. We'll get a full rundown. We'll see if he's going to practice today or play. And then, of course, Joshua Palmer hasn't practiced for a couple of straight days. So that's another one to keep an eye on simply because of what the numbers might look like at wide receiver as well.
If Palmer doesn't go, what do you think it looks like? Is Keon Coleman drawing into this game?
It's a great question. I go back and forth between him and Mecole Hardman because here's why I say it. And there's a lot of tentacles to this, right? Number one, how much do they trust Keon? I think that's number one. Like, do you trust him to be on the field, do everything he's supposed to do after everything that's happened? He's been kind of the sixth guy out of six guys, right? But honestly, even if you say, yeah, we would trust him, guys, if you're down Joshua Palmer, then okay, you also have to be very mindful of if Khalil Shakir is returning punts and you're putting more on him, well, you have another guy you could put in there, Mecole Hardman, so you don't have to have Khalil do that. And you can maybe make sure that he stays as healthy as possible. And then you have a dynamic guy not only as a punt returner possibly, but also you could add into the mix at wide receiver. So that's where I think that you have to start making decisions.
The question, too, about Johnson, Sal, like if he didn't play, his role, like pass catching out of the backfield, but also the blocking element, like we just assume Cook would take that on, but because he's already got so much in terms of carries, like maybe Ray Davis would do it?
I would think that Ray Davis would be, obviously on the field a lot more and become that guy. I mean, if Johnson can't play, I would almost certainly think they'd elevate Frank Gore. I don't think you go into the game with two running backs, you know what I mean? And then the question would be, how much would Frank Gore actually play, right? And I can't see him being on the field a ton.
One more thing I want to mention. Maybe the biggest thing to follow on the injury report is on the Jags side, where the Cole Van Lanen has missed two straight practices as well. He's their starting left tackle, and he's missed two practices. He's got a knee injury. If they're down their left tackle, I mean, that's something they have to scramble for, and like advantage Joey Bosa, I guess. Like this is what Bosa was brought here for, right? It's why his load was managed. He's a full participant. He's still probably working with a hamstring injury, but it'd be big, Sal, if they're down Cole Van Lanen.
You guys know how many times Josh Allen's been sacked this year, right?
40,
yeah.
Do you know how many times Trevor Lawrence has been sacked?
No, 40.
No,
41.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about Josh Allen a lot with how many sacks he's taken, right? I mean, Trevor Lawrence has taken some sacks this year. The Jags remind me of the Bills in a lot of ways, especially on defense, which is their sum is greater than their parts, right? Like you look at defense, they're just really good across the board. They do a lot of really good things. They don't have these. Yeah, of course, Joshua Hines-Allen's a really good player. They have guys who are good, and then on the offensive side, though, one of the big differences, the Bills have this really, really well-regarded offensive line. The Jags' offensive line is okay. It's not an offensive line that I think people are like, oh my God, they do all these things incredibly well. They protect, they run well. But they have guys. They have guys that can fill in. But, you think that, okay, if you're missing a part, that moves parts around a little bit. And then if he's not able to play at left tackle, Walker Little is a backup for them. They have a guy named Patrick McCarry who's a guard, but he's also banged up a little bit. He can slide out. They have options, but I do think it's interesting, that's an area. You're right. Now, the other part about this, Jeremy, real quick, is in Jacksonville, fans, media, all week have been saying basically that they thought that Van Lanen would be okay and play and fine. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's gamesmanship. He just hasn't practiced this week, but It's certainly possible he practices today and plays.
Okay. Sal, thank you. We'll be listening the schedule today. Sean McDermott, what time?
Sean McDermott, a little after 11 a.m. on the Extra Point Show. He'll give us a rundown there. The Bills will have a walkthrough. And real quick before I go, just want to say, because I think we need to say it here, Tre'Davious White was the annual winner of our Kent Hall Stand-Up Guy Award from the local media. Every year, we who cover the team, we vote on we give like a top three choices. We vote on somebody for their basically their availability and cooperation with the media. And Tre'Davious White won the award yesterday, and just want to give him a little bit of credit and shout out for that.
I saw the video. Trey joked that he said, all my teammates must be very mean if you gave it to me.
I love it.
Vintage Trey. So, congratulations to him. All right, thanks, Sal. We'll be listening coming up at 10 o'clock.
You got it, guys. Thanks.
Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. Bills and Jags, of course, Sunday, 1 o'clock. We're open for your phone calls now till 8:30 when we check in with Chris Brown. So give us a ring. You can call us on the Sabres, too. They had a nice win last night over the Rangers and now a 5-game homestand in a playoff spot. So hopefully some good vibes at KeyBank Center starting tomorrow night.